Chapter 3. Into the Wilds. Rio woke to the first light of dawn filtering through the forest canopy, casting dappled shadows on the ground around him. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. He took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of his sword at his side. Today, he would press further into unknown lands, each step carrying him closer to his first target, Alaris, the vampire. After packing up his camp, he set off along the narrow mountain path that twisted and turned through the dense woods. The sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls filled the air, a reminder of the life that thrived in these forests. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. As he walked, Rio's hand lingered near the hilt of his sword, his senses alert to every sound. He had heard tales of bandits and wild beasts roaming these parts, but so far, the journey had been quiet, almost too quiet. The sun had barely climbed above the horizon when he caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye. He froze, his muscles tensing, as he scanned the trees around him. For a moment, all was still. Then, he heard it, a low growl, rumbling from the shadows. Slowly, Rio turned, his gaze locking onto a pair of golden eyes peering out from the underbrush. A large, muscular wolf emerged from the shadows, its fur a dark, mottled gray that blended seamlessly with the forest floor. Its eyes were fierce, fixed on Rio with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Easy there," Rio murmured, his hand tightening on his sword. He knew better than to underestimate a wolf, especially one as large and wild as this. But the wolf didn't back down. It bared its teeth, a snarl rumbling from its throat as it prowled closer, muscles coiled and ready to strike. Rio took a slow step back, keeping his movements measured. He didn't want to provoke the animal, but he also couldn't afford to be caught off guard. The wolf circled him, its gaze never wavering, as if sizing him up. Just as he prepared to draw his sword, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The wolf halted, its ears perking up at the sound. Rio glanced in the direction of the whistle, his heart pounding as he searched the trees. A figure stepped into view, a man, cloaked in dark leather armor, with a hood that cast a shadow over his face. "Stay your hand, stranger," the man called, his voice calm yet commanding. He raised a gloved hand, signaling the wolf to stand down. The creature obeyed, retreating to the man's side, though its gaze remained fixed on Rio. Rio lowered his hand from his sword but kept his stance guarded. "Who are you?" he asked, eyeing the newcomer warily. The man pushed back his hood, revealing a face weathered by the elements, with sharp features and a piercing gaze. He looked Rio over, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just a traveler, like yourself," the man replied. "Though it's rare to see anyone wandering these parts alone." "Dangerous, wouldn't you say?" Rio met the man's gaze, his instincts on high alert. "I can handle myself." The man chuckled, the sound low and amused. "I don't doubt it. But the wilds have a way of testing even the strongest among us." Rio remained silent, watching as the man knelt beside the wolf, running a hand over its fur. There was something about the way he moved, a quiet confidence that spoke of experience. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just a simple traveler. After a moment, the man looked up, his expression thoughtful. "You're headed toward the vampire lands, aren't you?" Rio's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "Call it intuition," the man replied, his gaze steady. "Or perhaps I've seen enough fools make the same journey. The vampire queen doesn't take kindly to visitors." "I'm not just a visitor," Rio said, his voice firm. "I'm looking for someone." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "And who might that be?" "Alaris," Rio replied. "I've heard she's powerful, and I need her help." The man's smile faded, his expression turning serious. "Alaris doesn't offer her help freely. She's one of the most dangerous beings in these lands, bound by her own laws and loyalties. If you seek her, you should be prepared to face whatever trials she throws at you." Rio felt a spark of determination flare within him. "I am prepared." The man studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Then he nodded, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "Very well. But take my advice, approach with caution. The vampires are not like us. They live by their own code, one that few mortals understand. Rio inclined his head, acknowledging the warning. Thank you. I'll remember that. The man nodded, his gaze shifting to the wolf beside him. Come on, Ember. We have our own path to follow. With a final glance at Rio, the man disappeared into the shadows, the wolf trailing close behind. Rio watched them go, a sense of unease settling over him. The encounter had been unexpected, a reminder that he was venturing into a world far removed from the safety of his village. But it also strengthened his resolve. As he continued on his way, the forest grew denser, the trees towering above him like silent sentinels. Shadows stretched across the path, and the air grew colder, carrying with it a faint, metallic scent that set his nerves on edge. He could feel the vampire lands drawing closer, a dark presence lurking at the edge of his senses. By nightfall, he reached the border of the vampire territories. The trees here were twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the sky overhead was blanketed in storm clouds, hiding the moon and stars from view. Rio took a steadying breath, feeling the weight of the scroll in his pack, the prophecy echoing in his mind. One of blood and shadow. The words lingered, filling him with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He knew he was close. Alaris was somewhere within these lands, a being of darkness and strength, bound by a power he could barely comprehend. But he was determined to find her, to bring her into the fold, no matter the cost. With one final glance at the path behind him, Rio stepped into the shadows, his resolve unwavering. Whatever trials awaited him in the vampire lands, he was ready to face them.